everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is Carmina, and today we have with us again my colleague, my fellow astrologer, Levi Cosijn. Welcome back, Levi.
Hi, Carmina. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Yes.
So today, Levi and I wanted to talk to you about the upcoming new moon. We're going to have a new moon tomorrow, and we're going to take this opportunity, this occasion of this new moon to also talk a bit about combustion and retrogression, because with this new moon we're going to have not more, not less than 3 planets which are combust. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting, and on this channel we didn't really address combustion so far, so we can do that today. So can you share your screen, Levi?
Sure. Yes.
Wonderful. So this is the chart of the new moon. It's going to be at 8:20 a.m. on the 7th of December, as I see.
Yes, this is Belgium time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're going to have 3 planets combust. The moon, obviously. When there's a new moon, then the moon is behind the rays of the sun. And we have also Jupiter combust. It's been combust for quite some time, but it's going to become visible again on the 12th of December.
Oh, 5 days, 6 days.
That's going to be pretty soon. And then Saturn is also combust, and it's going to be combust till the 2nd of February 2019.
That's a long time.
Yes. So yeah, Saturn is quite interesting here.
I made a video about these planets' effects in Capricorn until 2020, this ending trio of ending Saturn, Pluto, and the South Node.
I watched it. It's great. Yeah. Then also we have Uranus. We can also talk about the retrograde planet, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, the opposite, right? They're on the complete opposite ends of the equation there. So yeah, I think it would be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about combustion and retrogression.
Can you define combustion? Because from Western astrology point of view, it's pretty different than what we know, because they use orbs in Western astrology. They say if the sun is within this orb with this planet, it means that planet is combust. But in Vedic astrology, we know that even if the planet is in the next sign, it can also be combust. So.
Yes, there's a whole technical explanation for this, but to define it would be a combustion. According to the old texts, they give it as ashta, which means set or setting. So planets are known or are like the sun sets, right? It disappears, it becomes invisible. All planets rise and set. So it's a measurement of looking at the invisibility or determining invisibility of a planet, basically. So it means that a planet is behind the sun. Now it's going to be different for Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and Mercury and Venus. So maybe we can illustrate this with a little, with some graphics. I practiced a little bit before, so let's start with the sun. So let's imagine this is the sun.
Then, circle.
So
I just wanted to mention a little bit about the sun, that usually we draw it with rays, but in Vedic astrology, it's inauspicious to draw the sun with rays. Because probably if you draw it with rays, it's too burning, it's combusting you. So that's why this is a nice sun that's not combusting you.
Well, children draw the sun with a smiley face on, which is also interesting. So it's alive, right?
Yes, they know it's alive.
This would be Mars, which is, traveling. So Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn travel around the sun, obviously, but also around the Earth, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Mercury and Venus don't.
So these are the orbs of Mars.
Jupiter and Saturn.
Okay. Okay, so this is Mercury or
Yes, this is Mercury.
Freddie Mercury?
Mercury and Freddie is circling the sun. And then Venus. We have Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have Jupiter. Here,
Mars. Spoiler.
put Mars there.
Okay, so the blue orbs are the Mars.
The outer planets, let's say. I mean, outside of the orb of the Earth.
Yes, yes. And Venus and Mercury are always closer to the Earth. And
Yes.
yeah, that's why we always see that Mercury is in the same sign as the Sun or the sign before or after, and Venus is maximum 2 signs before or after the Sun.
Yes, exactly. So this would be Venus combust, which is behind the sun, right? This would be Mercury combust. And this would be Mercury retrograde. And this would be Venus retrograde. Okay. Combust planets are invisible, so they are behind the sun. So here, for example, we have Earth, we have the sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. I drew Saturn here in green, but you see it, right? Saturn are outside the Earth's orbit. Mercury and Venus are, you know, not circling around the Earth, right? They only circle around the sun. So when a planet, as I mentioned, is a combustion is referred to as ashta, so setting. So here, when the planets travel, you know, at a certain point, they become invisible. They go behind the sun. And this is when a planet becomes combust. There's so a difference between Mercury, Venus, and Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, right? You see, like in the zodiac, a combust planet is obviously always very close to the sun. A retrograde planet is always opposite the sun in the zodiac.
Okay, so I see the main difference is that Venus and Mercury are either retrograde, either combust.
Yes, exactly.
So it's preferably in the chart to have Mercury and Venus retrograde than combust, right? Although people stigmatize this retrogression.
No, retrogression means that it's much closer to the Earth, which you see here, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are much closer to the Earth. And here for Mercury and Venus are retrograde when they're between the Earth and the Sun. Okay, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are retrograde when they're behind, or let's say in front of the Sun. So as far away, removed from the Sun as possible, which means that they're closer, much closer to the Earth, and so their rays can affect Earth much more profoundly, much more substantially. It's a good thing to have a retrograde planet in your horoscope from that perspective. I know that in other systems of astrology, for example, in Vaishafala, it's always a delaying aspect, for example. So in terms of what it can bring on a concrete and a material level, which is what we're talking about because it's closer to the Earth, which Earth obviously represents that, it would give more in terms of what it, you know, concrete things. But on a psychological level, it would be connected also to delays or this kind of thing. But I don't really consider retrogression like that, but I know that is also a way of thinking about it. Now, on the other hand, Combust Planet is behind the sun, so the rays of the sun are blocking that planet from connecting to the Earth. So that's going to create a sense of failure, things, or just things are delayed. Also, a retrograde planet is very confident. A combust planet is lacks confidence, basically. Okay, it's just, especially like in a natal horoscope, you'll see. See, also Parashara gives like planets that are combust, the bhavas will suffer. You know, the bhava lords.
That in Latin, combust means burnt.
Burned. So, of course, from a more esoteric point of view, we can see that the sun is always the purifier, and it's going to purify those qualities, those planets. So but for the person on a personal level, it's going to be more frustrating, right? The combust planet is agitated. It's severely agitated, so it's going to play out like that. But at the same time, it's also a purification process, which is always doesn't mean that it can give things. Only it would give things more hidden things. You have to probe deeper into what that planet represents. Expect less obvious things perhaps, or more concrete things that that planet represents, or something like that, would be like a reasonable way to think about it. A planet that is combust is too close to the sun, and the old astronomical text gives certain degrees when these planets are too close to the sun, right? So they become invisible, and it's a visible phenomenon, right? So it's when looking at the sky outside your window, you don't see the planet, it means it's not there, it's combust. And so there's certain degrees for that. So we're going to calculate that along prime vertical lines, and the prime vertical is one of the important lines. It's where the planets rise and rise from your local horizon, which is a very important thing, right? This is not along the ecliptic, it's along your local horizon. Surya Siddhanta gives the prime vertical as one of the pivotal lines along which many calculations in Vedic astrology, okay, so like for example planetary war and combustions, and also the Campana system, which is the system that we use.
I just wanted to mention we explained more about the prime vertical and its meaning in our book, in the chapter about bhavas, about houses, and the book is called Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. You can find the link below if you're interested in more about that.
Yes, so here we see Mars, right? The path of Mars around the Earth and the Sun. So here Mars is retrograde. It means it's completely in front of the Sun, away from the Sun, we could say, right? The furthest point away from the Sun here, and very close to the Earth. So it's going to give a lot more. Right? It can give more. Its rays are much closer and not interfered with the rays of the Sun. Now for Venus and Mercury, it's a little different. So because of course they are not circulating, or they're not going around the Earth, they're just going around the Sun. Venus and Mercury are combust when they're at the furthest end of the Sun here, showing a lack of confidence and so on. It took me a long time to really get my head around it, but once you do, it's like, oh gosh, it's not that hard. And it also gives you you visualize things more. And so it's good, because I think the planets it's also part of what we do, right? It's deriving meaning from some astronomical phenomena, which is, so it's a good way to kind of work through that. It's not that hard. You can go really far into the astronomy, but as astrologers, it's not, unless you're like this, mathematical brain that really, digs into this. And I know people who do, but it's not, but it's good to have a notion, I would say, like from combustion, how it's calculated. I think that's the minimum to, effort to apply, right? Really.
Yes, if you want to understand astrology, you should take a little time to study a little astronomy, a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I probably mentioned the most technical, little technical stuff here. There's different degrees of combustion. So basically a planet combust is going to have some patience. There's going to be some frustration in respect to these things. Now Jupiter is going to be combust for a week, because it's been going through, Sag, and
yes, so everybody's happy that Jupiter moved into Sagittarius, but whoops, it's also combust.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be, so I think it would around the, what was it, the 12th?
Yeah, I think the 12th.
Mm-hmm. It's going to go direct, and that should be very noticeable, like a planet when it becomes visible. So you look at, your window, you look at it, and you'll see Jupiter pop up there again, and then it's going to show itself, and it's going to still be in its Mula Trikona position there, and so it it would be, clearly felt also. So I'm curious
So
about
how
this.
do you think about the difference, like, because Jupiter has been Mulat Trikona in combust until now, and then it's going to be Mulat Trikona, so very energized, it's root power energy, it's going to
Mhm.
be non-combust. How do you think that translates for people?
Well, it depends on, of course, what Jupiter is representing in your horoscope, but whatever it represents as a natural indicator, as a house lord, and so on, as a Charakaraka, these things will be, there would be, clearing out of things, like hidden things become visible. Like basically, you can drive your own meaning from that. More confidence also in pushing through whatever Jupiter represents for you. Like for here, we see the Sagittarius ascendant, so it would be more in terms of, okay, this is the path I'm going, this is my life's path, this is following my my dharma, which is very strongly Jupiter in Sag also, and fighting your way through it. And in the beginning of this transit, like of course whenever Jupiter is combust, and it's been combust for quite some time, there could have been like not really being too confident, even though Jupiter promises things and gives certain awareness within consciousness. It would bring up, okay, I know what to do. So, but it's a kind of a little hidden. And when that planet becomes visible, it's like a planet clearing up. The sky is clearing up, and it would be giving more guidance and more understanding in respect to, for example, Sagittarius ascendant would be the first house. Yeah.
Yeah, and also every natural, significator of Jupiter. So maybe the relationship with your child, and the relationship with your husband, with your counselors, whatever Jupiter naturally is, your relationship to natural sugars, to fruit, if you're a farmer, to your fruit trees. Also, what do you think about this Saturn combust that's going to happen until February? How do you think that will be?
Yeah. Yes, Saturn combusts. Yeah, see, because Saturn and the Sun are so, different energies. I mean,
They are different, but they are similar because they are father and
yeah.
son. So they're both minimalistic. They're both separating. So they have this difference because one of them is like motivated and the other one is more laid back. But still, I think they have a lot of things in common. So we can look at it as also like, how do these energies work together and how do they clash?
Yeah, but I think when the closer they get, the more they will clash, because they're just really different in what they represent. There are similarities, obvious. I mean, they're genetically connected, and I think you're very right, is that in some twisted way they work together but it's going to be felt as a frustrating aspect, because they're so different, because the sun is, Saturn is so far off, right, from the sun also. So I think when they connect like that, it definitely would be purification, but also like a lot of clashes, like frustration, respect to, I mean, Saturn is already one of the, well, difficult planets because it connects to your complexes. So it would be bringing up complexes, purifying complexes, and this always results in ego bashing, or when there can be a lot of resistance, right? When the frustrating aspect, when Saturn is close to the sun, there can be ego problems, whatever, because Saturn represents, of course, Earth and our connection to the Earth, our mortality. The sun brings in, the light of the soul, which is always a difficult thing, for the ego. And of course, because we have Pluto there, we have the South Node there as well. So I think it would be a frustrating aspect for sure, but also a lot of opportunity to create breakthroughs. And that's always the case when you see these difficult symbolisms coming together, is that it can go either wrong and downhill, or there's an opportunity to break things down and to grow from that and to create real breakthroughs, right? Because Of course, Saturn is coming closer to Pluto there, so that's definitely going to be some transformation, involves some dissolving of or breaking of all, destroying of old structures, you know, within your persona, within who you think you are, with how you project yourself, which is within your own institution, we could say, which is all Capricorn.
So a lot of purification there, a lot of conjunctions that will purify things, that will bring you like to the core of things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so there's always these ways you can look at it, more from a, you know, negative lens, or more from a positive lens, in the sense that it's going to be difficult, it's going to be frustrating. At the same time, there's a lot of opportunity for breakthroughs and purification. It depends on how you look at it. But I think with a strong Jupiter, it's always a good thing to have Jupiter strong, to look at things from a higher perspective. And there's more, let's say, there's a stronger buffer beneath to tackle any problems, I would say, with a strong Jupiter. Yeah.
Yes, and always with combust planets, it's good to go inward more and find out the inner reasons, because the combustion, it means you're being burnt. So you're being burnt to a pulp, and you have to see, like, you're being burnt. What are those ashes? You know, the ashes are something that is supposed to be to let go of, because the sun is also a separator, and you have to remain very aware of what the things that are burnt are, and why they are burnt, and what is remaining. So I think that's an interesting way to look at this combustion. And what would you say about the moon being combust? That's not something very, let's say, special, because it happens every month around the new moon.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it's always very important to consider new and full moons, because it's 2 points in a month that we stand still. You know, moon combust means the mind, our ideas, our desires, whatever moon represents, is going really inward, right? It's invisible, so it's a good time to, and you can feel this if you really follow these full moon and new moon dynamics, that it's actually happening. It can be that, you know, it's not like everything, you know, falls still or something like that, or is delayed, or, but it's just a time to, okay, to whatever you're at that point, there's going to be more an energy of reflection, and so you're not going to feel like really, you know, full blown stepping into it. I mean, I mean, it can happen, but on some level there will be some. The energy shows something more introverted, more inert, let's say.
Yeah, because the moon also relates to the blood that flows through us. And yeah, so I guess it's a moment of stillness. That's why some people recommend during a new moon and also a full moon for people to fast and not really consume maybe intoxicants.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think because they're the two sattvas, right? The two main players.
Actually, the three sattvic planets are there, like Jupiter, the moon, and the sun. They're all there conjunct or combust, two of them, and agitated, and the sun is super delighted.
And the sun is very delighted, and so that's when the king and the queen join. It's always an important point. Obviously, that's why we really pay attention, right? Once a month, and then during the full moon, when they're opposite the zodiac, it's like a fruition of that. So it's always an opportunity, you know. I think that's what it is. It's creating opportunities to get more understanding. You see, if you look at full moon meditations, for example, which are so I mean, if you're into meditation, you know it, and even not, like your dream life when during a time of a full moon, you know, restlessness, all this archetypes, all this symbolism we have from history, right? Wolves coming to life and this kind of thing. So it's a time when, you know, but the new moon is opposite, is really not that. It's reflecting, and I see a square here with exact square with Neptune and Mars. There's going to be an exact Mars-Neptune conjunction.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So how would you look at that? Look, you have some intuition about this? Not really thinking about it?
Well, the first thing that when I saw that Mars Neptune was like a flood, like a flooding of something, because Mars is kind of accident, unexpected things, and Neptune also relates to tides, but maybe
Mhm.
flooding like on a wave, a subconscious wave of consciousness, not actual flooding of waters, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have Mars in Pisces. See, I think when we look at a square, it's always an aspect of tension. So, right, there's different. It's
Yes, it's
different.
attention needed to jumpstart things, because always in physics there is this component, this force they call tension, and it's necessary for things to get moving. So it's
Yes,
not something bad, the square, actually. It's part of life.
it's actually it can be a very productive aspect. I mean, it can lead to. I've seen it in my when I look at my transits, like the squares where things happen. And yes, so that would be a new moon in Sagittarius squaring Mars in Pisces. We have the Lord of Sagittarius in the sign of Sag, with all these Sattvic planets squaring Mars. Um, so if we look at Mars, because we have, Sun, Moon, the King, the Queen, the
And the
conscious,
counselor, the Brahmin there, Jupiter.
Jupiter, the Brahmin, all the Sattvic planets, in a tensionous or in a conversation of tension with Mars, which is
The
exerting
general.
within.
In
Oh,
the
did I say? What did I say? It's no, it's Pisces, right? Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
Um, so
They are kind of in conflict with the general, but the general is also in a Sattvic sign.
yes, Mars is also property, siblings. It can be, firemen, police.
I don't think it's a tense, I don't think it's going to be a conflict there. I think that Mars in a Sattvic sign, which is ruled by Jupiter, which is there with the sun and moon, it's going to help jumpstart, like it's going to help move something there. So it's going to help give it a push. That's how I see it. I don't see it as
Yes.
something negative.
Also, because if we look at the square is an aspect. If we look at graha drishti, right, and the planetary aspects, these special aspects that Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter make, right? Mars aspects fourth, seventh, and eighth from itself, and the fourth aspect is of course a square, and Saturn gives the 10th aspect, right? It gives the third, seventh, and 10th aspect, which is also a square in the opposite direction, we could say. Um, so these two malefics, right there, when you look at their graha drishti, are responsible for creating squares, we could say. So of course, that's why it's connected to, I think it's interesting, connected to a tension, an aspect of tension. But these plants are also the plants that make things move. Mars, energizing. Saturn resisting things, like resisting a bad idea, for example, or getting rid of a bad idea, perseverance, endurance. So yeah, I think you're right, is that a square is, it's not necessarily going to be a conflict thing. It could be just playing different energies within our consciousness playing out, and not really creating the right amount of tension and friction to actually get something moving, right? Yeah, and especially because it's in the sign of Jupiter. Jupiter is also ruling, is strong. It's always important to look at the dispositor of any configuration, because that's what's underlying. Okay, it has a final say on it. Like, even if you have a debilitated planet, but the ruler of it is in a good shape, it's gonna make that debilitation less severe.
Yeah, I think we covered this example. I didn't want to make a super long video today for you guys. I just wanted us to explain to you in the context of this new moon what combustion can mean and what is kind of a difference between combustion and retrogression. And yeah, just give you a little insights, a few insights on what we see, the planetary configuration. So I'm sure Levi will be back with us soon to talk about more interesting things. So thank you again for being here today.
Thank you, Carmina. It's always super nice.
Yeah, so I'll see you guys soon with more videos on astrology and the cards of truth. I'm just going to remind you that Levi and I wrote a book, an introductory book about some main elements in astrology, about planets, signs, houses, and aspects. And it's an ebook. You can order it at the link given in the description. So I'll catch you soon. Have a nice new moon, Levi. Bye.
Bye.